Give it a second, see if it pops up.
Yep, you're online.
You see it?
No, it says live, but I'm not seeing. There we go. Yep, it's coming in. We're there.
We're there. All right. Where are we?
It says live, but I'm not seeing.
No, it's on YouTube.
Hello, everybody.
There we go. All right. Hey guys, we are driving this ship without our captain, Mr. Jim Gass, today. We're determined, and Jim couldn't make it today, so he asked us to take over and keep our schedule intact here. So today's discussion on the reboot is risk compliances every business needs. I'm Brian Bradshaw with BNLPC on Long Island in New York.
And I'm Dave Groot with WinStar Technologies in Culp River, Virginia.
And I'm David Luft with LDD Consulting in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
All right, guys. So topic today, risk compliances, which covers a vast majority of different topics and from security to there's just a myriad of different topics that fall under that. So David, you want to take a stab and discuss some of the broader topics, and then we can kind of, without getting too granular here.
Well, sure. I mean, there, as we have noticed, if you're in business, you're aware of a lot of different compliances over the last 15 years that have come to light, and they continue to evolve. Right? We're now seeing them. Like, for instance, you have CMMC for the DoD. We have compliance issues that are specific to foreign, Europe, GDPR, or PCI for credit cards. We have HIPAA for medical, and then like New York, they have their own compliance as well, right, Brian? I forget what the name of that one is, but every industry basically falls under one category or another of compliance. But the bottom line is they all derive or start from the NIST cybersecurity framework as their beginning point, and then they further evolve as to what the requirements are to make those compliances.
Okay, and so regarding so if who monitors or keeps track of who's compliant and who isn't, and what are the risks if you're not?
Well, so I mean that's actually depends on the compliance that we're talking about, but the more common ones, again, the PCI compliance, that's an industry regulation. It is not a done by the government or anything. The credit card industry itself came up with their own policing, their own compliance mechanisms, so that they didn't have to have that created by somebody who's not in their business,
Right.
Which was a good move. It was, they were able to get on top of it. So, obviously the repercussions of not being compliant, or who mandates if you are compliant. In that particular case, there's not a lot of active, hey, we're going to show up and see if you are, except for every year you're basically attesting to your compliance, right? So you're getting a standard questionnaire. You have to go through that based on the type of credit card transactions as you are doing as your business. Are you, over the phone? Are they internet based? Are they in person? There's different levels of questionnaires that come out, and you have to answer the questions on that. And basically you're attesting that you've met all the objectives or all the requirements for that particular compliance. Now, when it becomes a problem is if you have a breach, and at that point, I mean, they do the audit and you haven't been compliant, but yet you've been attesting that that's been the case. And quite frankly, that's a pretty common occurrence. A lot of businesses kind of get in the weeds on that, right? They start to go through that compliance and they're like, they start all the things in there. Well, I think we have something like that, and I'm pretty sure. Yeah, well, we've got a password. So they just start saying yes across the board, and then there
are risks with that. You're acknowledging something that you and again, ignorance isn't going to work here, right? So we have our own clients reach out to us and they want us to go ahead and quote unquote make us compliant. And it's like, right. I can't make you compliant. I can tell you what you need to do in order to be compliant. And it's checking yes on all the answers to the questionnaire, which is the only way really to get around it is right. to say yes to everything, which is seems like a simple thing to do, but like you're saying, David, I mean, it's if you're now vulnerable and accepting you're acknowledging that this is what your practice does or how you handle your credit card transactions, and it's not easy. I mean, it's not easy to be compliant, but it's when and if you are breached, that's when it's going to come back and bite you, because the cost of a breach are going to far exceed the cost of us implementing a solution to make you compliant.
Well, compliance really goes beyond just IT anyways. I would say there's 3 different areas: the policies and procedures, which you mentioned earlier, Brian, training for your employees so that they understand everything, and then also the assessments, which you mentioned, Dave. And those 3 things, we can only do so much. There's a lot that the customer has to do on their own to make sure that they are compliant. We can assist them with those things, but it's not just come in and drop a firewall and some antivirus on stuff and you're compliant. It's way more complex than that.
It very much is more complex than that. And I can say, you're touching on the policies and procedures, and I don't care what compliance we're talking about. Any of them require policies and procedures. And what I see happening, and more than ever, with all of our prospects and clients and the folks who we talk to about these compliance type issues, they all say, well, we have a policy on X, Y, or Z to match this need. And, the first question I'll say is, okay, well, is that in writing? Can you show me your policies? And sometimes they can, but most often, no, they can't. And then if you get breached, the auditor, they're not going to ask you, they're going to go ask your people. What's the policy for X, Y, or Z? And if they don't know what that policy is, you don't have a policy. It's just that simple.
And that's why you have to have your employees sign those policies.
Well, and yeah, they have to attest to reading them and understanding them. And there is no getting compliant, right? It's not like we flip a switch, we're compliant, now we just move on. We're past that now. We've already got it off, right? Yeah. It's an ongoing culture of security and process and procedures and such in your business. And I can tell you that as we start to mature as a nation in these security compliance regulations, we're starting to see the signs of this, even like with CMMC. It's not good enough to make policies and procedures, put them in place, prove that you have all those check boxes there, but you have to prove that it's been ongoing. Like, you can't make a change today and have an assessment to get your CMMC compliance if they don't see a year's history on that or thereabouts. That's the guidelines, sort of. That's not enough. You're not mature enough in your compliance. You have to maintain that culture, and it has to start with the higher up. Like that's just where it goes.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, we did an audit for a credit union. It was a controls audit, and they had all their boxes checked, and fortunately, it was, for their purposes, it was just an audit, and it was and we got granular down to the point where we were at the actual tellers stations, and they were like, well, we can't access XYZ data from the tellers, is what we were told. So we were filling out our questionnaire, and we said, okay. I said, show me. And they said, show you what? I said, well, show me that you can't access it from this teller machine. And they said, well, you can't. I said, okay, all I'm asking is to show me that you can't do that. So sure enough, we went to a teller, went on their machine, and they, boom, opened it up, and they were like, oh, wow, that shouldn't happen. I said, again, this is just an audit. Nothing's being reported. I said, this is why you need to fix this, and then we'll come back in 6 months and revisit it and re-audit. But and again, that could have been, and I kind of let them know that part of this process is you really thought that this was the case. They couldn't access this data, or data, however you want to say it. You can't access this, but somebody somewhere made a controls change to something that allowed this to happen. And that's, more importantly, the fact that you don't have that documented is just as big of an issue as the fact that they can access it is how did that happen? So
yeah, change management is a big part of that whole documentation process. And the truth is, for most small businesses, I mean, that's a pretty daunting task to take on, like to just get to the point of having all these things, and then training our people, and then keeping them updated according to the times and the needs. I mean, like, think about this. All these businesses that were compliant. Let's say they were following the process and they had their policies and procedures. Then COVID hit, And the next thing you know, they're no longer in the office. They're working in a dispersed work form. Did they update their policies and procedures for home working? Because of, no, I promise you they didn't, because they were reacting at that point in time, right? They were like, oh my gosh, we got to keep our business alive. And that's where they get you. The hackers didn't take a holiday, right? They're still trying to do a breach every which way.
I think they got busier, if anything, right?
That's right.
The bigger targets, bigger audience.
We've seen a huge uptick in that.
Absolutely. So, some of the things we try to cover with clients and prospects is and we mentioned it earlier, is internal policies and procedures, right? So you every business should have an incident response plan, a cybersecurity plan, an acceptable use policy for your network. And some of this stuff can kind of coexist along with your handbook, but there's things that taken for granted. I mean, it's I don't want to say easy, but having these plans and policies in place can help minimize any risk or exposure that you have, because you're following something. You're following something documented that's been vetted and tested. So an incident response plan is one of those ones that we look at, and depending on the size of the organization and the procedures that they have, that's for those of you that don't know, an incident response plan is simply, how do we respond to an incident? And that can be a virus, it can be malware, ransomware, it could be a shutdown of the building, natural disaster, anything. So it's not specific to one event, but how do you respond to that? And with a plan in place, you have levels 1, 2, and 3 of the incident. This is a severity 1, severity 2, severity 3, and then you kind of go through that flow chart and follow the process to remedy the situation, and then go ahead and write up your postmortem of the event and circle back and make changes. Like David Groot was saying, it's not set it and forget it. You have the policy in place. That's not you're not abstained from any incidents. And again, there's going to be changes to it. It's not the policy exists, so we're good. No. Policy exists, so you have a foundation that you can work off of and help mitigate risk down the road.
And again, those incident response plans, those are way bigger than just IT. And people are thinking, how fast can you get my server up? But you need to be able to contact your vendors to tell them, hey, we move locations, ship stuff here. You need to have ways to contact your employees that aren't all electronic on your servers, so that when that's gone, I mean, it's way bigger than just IT. Yeah,
I mean, and they could include, the office is inaccessible. There's a call tree that's established, so that this executive admin is calling these 20 people to let them know this is how you're going to work today, or this is what you're going to do. But and with it defined like that, they do need to be reviewed. I would say at least twice a year. I don't know, just to make sure that there's no changes in personnel or staffing, but. They need to be they're evolving and changing, but without IT, I mean, personnel call trees, stuff like that. When do you, depending on the severity of the incident, do you involve your attorneys, law enforcement? If there's any ransom demanded, it's stuff that, listen, no one wants to think about, but if you have that in place, and that's what we try to help our clients with, and even from a marketing perspective to our prospects, that just having these in place is takes the burden off of just a complete 100% reactive scenario, which can be a nightmare, because that however that's handled can be catastrophic to your business if it's handled incorrectly.
Well, when that happens, it's crisis mode, right? Nobody's thinking clearly. And if you don't have that plan in place and you haven't gone through those steps in a column, it's kind of like, we see this everywhere, right? Professional football or even school or where they practice, and then if they practice well, they play well, right? It becomes automatic. It's just muscle memory. But yeah, I mean, when is it that we declare it a breach? When is it that I call my insurance company? When is it that I call the attorney? Who is going to do that? Who's responsible in the organization to talk to the media if it's a big enough breach? What does an employee sitting at their desk do the minute they realize that their files are now encrypted? What's the process? What's that first step? Who do I notify? What do I do? When you're in panic mode, you're not going to think through those things. You need to just know. I can remember as a young man growing up in the Midwest, we did tornado drills at school all the time, right? It was get up, go out in the hallway, bend down, cover your head, like all those, and we were like, go outside, whatever the different drills were, and you just did them all the time. Every year we counted on it because it was a 20-minute break from class, right? So we were like all good about that. but that's why they had to do that, because when the time came, that wasn't the time to teach the kids how to get out of the school safely and orderly. It was, you do that when things are calm. That's
usually when it happens, right? I mean, it's and think with a clear head, and when there's no one's proactively trying to, how do I become compliant? I mean, it just doesn't happen. It's just not the nature of business owners but again, but naive and negligence just doesn't work.
It's one of those, you're taking a huge risk, and it will come back as negligence, and you will be found guilty. Like, it can take your business away. I mean, just, it's not a joke. It really can.
It's not. So, I don't know much about, because we don't have any clients that do any work, that don't do any work in Europe. So GDPR compliance. Can you explain what that is and how that, what the importance of that is? Do you know much about it?
I mean, I don't know a whole lot about it because we don't have anybody who's using it either, but I can say it's basically, there's a couple of different layers to it, two different sides, whether you're the person whose data is being maintained or your business who's maintaining that data and sharing it. It really is very similar to our, personally identifiable information kind of concept, right? If your name, your address, anything that can be tied back to you that can be used to steal your identity is not maintained in a proper way, then you can be held, out of compliance.
And where can someone go if they perhaps are doing, let's say they're doing something that should be, that they need to maintain this compliancy and they're not? Is there somewhere that they can go to kind of get information on whether or not they need to be compliant?
I mean, certainly, the easy answer to that is just to jump on the web and do a quick search. If you're dealing with a business that is in the EU, then you are falling under GDPR compliance regulations. That's the understanding I have. It doesn't matter where you're located. It matters where you're doing business.
Right. And do your clients, I know ours do, we try to maintain cybersecurity policies for them. Does that fall under a risk compliance?
Does what fall under the
cybersecurity? Yeah. Well, I mean, so, right. I mean, that's something that could be overlooked, but that's 100%.
Well, I mean, that's the core of that cybersecurity framework, right? Is the security aspect. Like, David, I know you mentioned that we can only do so much as an IT industry. And that's true, but that is where it begins, right? I mean, we're hardening the devices, the endpoints, the data access, the perimeter, all those different parts fall under IT, and then therefore cybersecurity.
But my point is, you can't just pick one person and say, make me compliant.
No, there is no easy button to any of this, and there is no quick fix. Oh my gosh, I got an audit coming. I need to be compliant by 2 weeks from now. Well, you're done. Anybody who wants to take your money for that, run, because they're lying to you. They're not going to get you there.
And the nice thing about these frameworks is that even if you're in and there are not very many of them, but say you're a landscaping business and everybody pays you by check, maybe you're not fall under any of these compliance, but this stuff is still important with all the cybersecurity and ransomware happening. And it's a good foundation for you to follow, that you can make sure that you're getting secure or have a pathway to be fully secure.
I have conversations with people in business owners or management level or C-suite kind of folks, and they, I hear everything. Well, the cliche, we're too small, they're not going to want to hit us, like, we only use this computer to do one or two things. So it's okay that it doesn't have all the other security aspects as the rest of our network does. And I try to make them understand, but that's on the same network. It doesn't matter, and they don't get it. Like, they see it from a perspective of at their business, a person stands in front of that computer and therefore it's being used. They don't understand the concept of somebody under the hood running it from the network. And that's the part that I think makes it easy for people to kind of stick their head in the sand, right?
And one of the easy ways to test that is just to say, okay, so let's just take this computer away from you today,
right,
and see, can you still operate your business, or have you, is everything gone?
Right.
And
we've actually had those tests with our clients where we just shut their server up and say, call me in an hour, tell me how it went. It's like they're going crazy.
It's those clients that when you try to talk, whether it be backup or business continuity. Oh, no. I can. That's okay. We don't need that. We can go weeks without our
Right.
server. And it's like the same day when their internet goes down for 10 minutes, they're calling up like, we can't work. It's like,
Right. Well, and again, if we're going to, on the topic of the compliance side of things, there are certain compliances that, part of their regulation is that you're able to get back in business within a certain amount of time after a devastation, right? Like after a server failure or a breach or whatever.
And that's big in the medical community because your patient may be at another hospital and need access to those records right now because it's critical. So that's part of that compliance, and that's a good example of it.
Right. That's
And us as in the IT business, we are we try to pride ourselves on the service level that we provide to our clients, the SLAs on turnaround time. And if we say that regardless of what happens, whether it be to your server or to your building for that matter, we say we can have you up and running in this capacity, whatever the defined capacity is, in 4 hours. You better, it's our job to make sure that we not only do we have to do ongoing testing for that to make sure that not only is that the case, but what's changed. Maybe their environment's changed and or things have been added and we need to do things differently. So on our end, we have to keep up with all that and make sure that we're well documented, we're tested, and we can meet those expectations because you could be. I can guarantee you that if that one time that you need it and it doesn't work, that's not going to be a good day for you.
Because you mean like when there's no internet, no cellular service, and
exactly
you're looking for some piece of documentation that you can't get your hands
on. One of the other things I think is important, I think it kind of falls under here is the importance of a vendor management policy for your clients, meaning that there's different tiers of vendors, and for us, we're a tier 1 vendor. We have access to our clients' networks, and we have access to their, the bread and butter of their business, right? So we're a risk to them, right? So do they vet us properly? And so we need to make sure that take that one step further, that the products and services that we sell and use and touch our clients with, are vetted, right? So make sure that and there's a tier 3 vendor may be somebody that is outside and has no access to anything. So, but they should still be identified. All vendors of businesses should be identified. They should be given a level, and then a risk assessment on them, and make sure that they're in compliance as well. It's not uncommon.
I mean, you should be seeing what, like you say, what access they can have to different systems and data, but then how could that potentially impact you, or how could they, come about doing that in the process of engaging them, right? I think we all have kind of heard in the recent past, the supply chain, nobody's immune. I mean, in the last week or two, Microsoft had, huge vulnerability for Exchange email servers. I mean, that's a pretty standard email platform for business in the country. And, of course, you'd like to say, well, of course, Microsoft is a vetted company, and they are. They're very serious about security. They're doing all the right things, but that doesn't mean that it is a guarantee. And if
Right.
you don't have systems in place to kind of be monitoring and looking at those things, then potentially you're exposing yourself even through those bigger vendors.
Yeah, it's ongoing. There's not a, like we said earlier, when we started, there's not a check this box and you're good. You're compliant, and we'll see you in a year.
Right.
You know, we get
Right.
scanned every month. Our network gets scanned every month for compliance, PCI compliance. They just check our, again, because there's vulnerabilities out there. We know firewalls need to be patched, servers need to be patched. So our vendor we use for PCI compliance, they do checks, and we get reports every month, and we need to be passing, right? We can't listen. There's months that go by, we get a yellow or a red tick on one of the whether it be a port or something that's vulnerable. We identify it, we fix it, we document it, and again, it's stuff that it's very easy to not do this as a business owner because there's work involved, right? And that's kind of we try to help our clients with this stuff, but again, it's a difficult conversation because, like you said earlier, make me PCI compliant. You know what? That's hours of time. That's hours of not only time of us going through, but now actually implementing. It may cost you $5,000 for me to review and look through all this, but it may cost you $20,000 to implement because you need X, Y, and Z licenses and access and all this other stuff, and it's a burden. It's just it's a tough, it's a very serious issue, but it should definitely not be overlooked.
I think the important thing to take away, if you're watching this meeting today, is if you're a business owner and you're falling under one of these compliance regulations, realize that I hope that we have at least conveyed the point that there is no perfect answer. There's no guarantee. Compliance is a culture as much as it is anything else, right? So you're not necessarily going to knock it out of the park on your first attempt to get compliant, quote unquote, but you're going to get better and you're going to start improving. It's not a stop, shut down operations. Let's go, invest a half a year's revenue into getting ourselves compliant. No, it's a process, right? And so just have that culture and, start where you can and continue to improve upon that as often as possible.
And even if you're not in a compliant industry, it's still a great framework to help you understand things that are important to have for security and to cover yourself if something does happen.
Right.
That you could still use these and just don't have to go all the way through them, but it wouldn't hurt.
You can never have too much as far as security or
regulation. And again, it's not, we can't go to our clients or prospects and say, you know what, you give us X amount of dollars and we'll fix this for you. There's not a dollar amount that can fix it. It's something
it's not a product-based fix, right?
Right.
I mean, there are certainly products that assist in providing insight to what it is that needs to be fixed. And then there's security products, software, firewalls, but it's a culture. It has to start with the business. The business has to want this to be where they're at before they're going to get the time investment to get where they need to be.
Couldn't agree more with that.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
I think, guys, how do you think we did? Did we cover most of it? I think we.
I mean, we without getting too deep into the weeds, I think we did pretty good. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. I'm not sure. I don't have next week's schedule.
Give me just a second. I can tell
problem.
you. Business owner productivity hacks on April 7th.
April 7th. All right.
So it's about being more productive.
Sounds good.
Ways for business owners to be more productive.
I think we could all use a little insight on that, right? All right, guys. If nothing else, we'll enjoy the rest of the day.
All right.
Thanks. You guys have a good day.
See you guys
later, everybody. Bye.